Hello everyone. Today the EU foreign ministers are meeting in Luxembourg and Micheal Martin, our Minister for Defence, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Taoiseach is attending that meeting as well. Incidentally, it's been chaired by the High Commissioner for Foreign Affairs in the European Union, Joseph Borrell, who famously said that Europe was a garden and outside of Europe was a jungle, and it needed to be pruned in terms of implementing the policies, the neoliberal policies of the European Union in other countries. And coincidentally, David Lammy has been in attendance. I hear you say Britain are not a member of the European Union. Well, there you have it. They're standing in solidarity in terms of what's being spoken about in Luxembourg today. Now, a couple of the elements of what's being discussed are important because we've seen what's happened over the last couple of years in terms of the war in Ukraine and the economic fallout across Europe in terms of the sanctions. There's been 14 rounds of sanctions packages across Europe, which has hammered the energy infrastructure in terms of the cost of people switching on the heating this winter has gone through the roof due to excessive profiteering and the sanctions being imposed on Russia. Now, it is important because it was reported on a number of weeks ago about what happened in Denmark regarding the Nord Stream explosion, and that's well over 2 years ago to when that occurred. And also, it is very important because now we're importing frack gas, LNG gas. A terminal was recently being pushed ahead then around Limerick, also at up to 4 or 5 times the cost. So this is part of these discussions to push the more sanctions packages and talking about the Middle East also as well, and more money again for the military industrial complex, much the same to what's happening in Ukraine in terms of the military industrial complex pushing this proxy war. And of course, Micheal Martin is an able lapdog for the warmongers in Brussels and in Washington DC and in many more countries as well. Now, it is important because the whole push around the war in Ukraine is the same narrative that's been pushed again about the unwavering support and Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, international recognised borders, and Ukraine must prevail and all this type of stuff. So Micheal Martin will be an able lapdog at this meeting, handing over more of our money, implementing the temporary directive in terms of the immigration chaos in Irish society and the economic fallout as well, not to mention the push and erosion of Irish neutrality. Of course, the media won't talk about this. They won't talk about the incursion of NATO warships into Irish ports in the last number of weeks. And also, they're going to speak about the Middle East as well. We saw the attacks in the Middle East by the IDF on UN or UNIFIL bases that were there in the last number of days as well. And there is a lot, you can look back on my previous video regarding the Lebanon as well and those issues as well. And that's going to create a huge refugee crisis. They've already ordered the UN troops to get out of Lebanon. And this just has to come at the remit of the UN Security Council agreement, not the UN Secretary General. So it is important to note the fact that this chaos is continuing. I did a previous video and I'll link in the comments as well about my video that I did last week on Lebanon, but it's creating a huge refugee crisis already. Already 400,000 have gone across the border into Syria. There's over 1.2 million people in southern Lebanon now that are completely displaced. The infrastructure is getting decimated as this bombardment and siege continues. And it's important, that's going to have a huge fallout as well across Europe. So they've spoken about all this sort of stuff and they're going to speak about the same, pushing the same narrative that ordinary people are going to pay for. And it's ironic in Ireland that one of the wealthiest countries, they say on paper, in Europe, but yet they're given handouts so people can afford to switch on their heating this winter to keep the profits high for the big energy companies, rather than putting essential needs at the heart of what people need in society, such as the need for a dignified existence. But Micheal Martin will be off in Luxembourg, singing like a choir boy with his masters in Brussels, And of course David Lammy is there as well, pushing the UK again towards bigger confrontations in terms of what's going to happen in the Middle East, what's happening in Ukraine as well, which will have a huge economic fallout as well. Not to mention if further escalations with Iran in terms of fuel prices as well. It is important to know, in terms of, just to go back to the fuel prices for a moment, that regardless of what's gone on, it is important that the parties here still push carbon taxes, push VAT and more taxes on ordinary people. But the profits are always high for the super rich, the wealthy, the big corporations, who the political establishment represents every single time. We need really representative democracy in Ireland, where voices come from the grassroots up in our society, from communities, from towns, villages and our cities. Rural and urban should unite around our whole nationality and issues around sovereignty as well. And it's ironic when you talk about sovereignty in other countries, they don't talk about sovereignty in Ireland. And Micheal Martin, of course, said it was a backward-looking idea. Complete hypocrites. So thanks a lot for the support of my videos. Please share them and please press subscribe to my YouTube channel. Slán, take care.